During the 1940s, agitation for better treatment of workers and a raise in salaries by the colonial masters became the order of the day. At the time, nationalism had become entrenched in the hearts of many Nigerians and the clamor for self-rule had begun. Aggrieved over the cost of living as a result of the effects of the Second World War, the technical workers demanded an increase in the cost of living allowance. However, their demands were ignored, and this led to the strike action of 1945. Veteran labor leader Michael Imudo was pivotal to the success of the strike action. The strike, which began on June 22, 1945 and lasted 45 days, saw the unification of both the public and the private sectors as over 200,000 workers from 17 different work unions took part in the strike. The trade unions transcended the division of ethnicity, religion, and regionalism. The strike struck the most devastating blow against colonialism in the country. It also affirmed the capability of Nigerian workers in making a forceful assertion of their rights, which the government must respect. The Nigerian General Strike of 1945 had provided a much-needed outlet for the steam which might have pushed people into the War of Independence. A few years later, another strike action known as Go Slow would take place, this time in the coal city of Enugu. Enugu was the capital of the eastern region, and it had also become the coal capital of British West Africa and an anchor of Nigeria's production. Nigerian coal had been of strategic importance during the Second World War. It was also vital in the rebuilding of infrastructure by the post-war British government. During the war, inflation raged terribly because many of the men had been called upon to serve in the British Armed Forces, having been led to believe that their sacrifices would create a better world. By 1949, Enugu had developed into a town with wide international sophistication. Having about 25,000 inhabitants and approximately 8,000 employed coal miners, the city was home to two main mines, the Iva Valley and Obweti, of which Iva Valley was the leading coal mine in the country. At the time, the miners supported maternity clinics, road building, and clean water supplies, using their regular income for the development of their communities. However, the lives of the miners were not rosy. They lived in terrible conditions in the valley with low oxygen, low morale, and even lower remuneration. The workspace was dangerous and highly depressing. This was in sharp contrast to the living conditions of the Europeans, who were clean-cut, well-paid, and worked above the ground. The miners had strict work demarcation, which was imposed by the British. Some were hewers, while some were tubmen. By late 1949, there was an increasing resentment for the unfair treatment and equally unfair payment of Nigerian workers. The miners began to make demands regarding the dreadful conditions, pay, and reinstatement of unfairly sacked workers. Their demands were, however, rejected. At the time, agitation for self-rule, nationalist movement, and the cry for better treatment of workers became even more pronounced. Enugu was the abode for the Zikist independent movement. Hence, the political environment was becoming increasingly radicalized, and the European community viewed nationalist agitation with fear. The Zikist General Secretary, Okudili Azaya Ojiyi, well versed in colonial labor law and aware that striking was illegal, incorporated the Dorhiam miners' Kakani go-slow tactic and spent days in the mine teaching it to the miners. The new method of protest, go slow, meant that the workers worked very slowly, thereby affecting production. The miners produced a handful of coal as opposed to the wagon loads of coal they used to produce. A series of negotiations ensued, and although an agreement was reached, the colliery managers would fail to honor their words, and between November 10 to November 12 in 1949, 200 more miners were sacked. The miners fighting for back pay owed them, known as roistering, and which was later declared illegal, would occupy the mine. The government had attempted to remove mine explosives from the Eva Valley mine. Whilst the removal of explosives was successful at Obweti, it was unsuccessful at Eva Valley, as the workers would not assist the colonial officers. The removal of the explosives signaled a lockout, one which the miners had suffered during the general strike of 1945 and were not about to go down that road again. What started as a simple tactical protest became a stay-in strike.